My family is known throughout Boston's medical community as the B. Williams dynasty. St. Mary Memorial Hospital, an elegant structure that overlooks the Charles River, has stood at the forefront of New England's medical care since its establishment in 1890. Renowned particularly for its cardiac surgery program, the hospital consistently ranks among the top 10 in the nation. Its sleek, modern architecture reflects a seamless fusion of heritage and innovation. At the helm of this institution stands my mother, Margaret Williams, the formidable chairperson. Her reputation is built on an uncanny ability to alter the trajectories of medical careers with a single word, delivered often with a warm smile that masks the steel beneath. That duality is the essence of who she truly is. Every Sunday evening, she hosts a formal family dinner at our residence in the affluent Back Bay neighborhood. For me, these evenings are a test of endurance. "Catherine, tonight's wine should be the 2000 vintage Chateau Margaux," she said with an air of casual command. I offered a silent nod and descended to the cellar. It has been 3 years since I began living as a resident worker in the family mansion. In that time, I have never once contradicted her. As I descended the grand staircase, I made sure my footsteps were inaudible. The white blouse and gray skirt I wore had become my de facto uniform in this household. Despite graduating with honors and earning an advanced degree, I now split my time between my role as a pharmaceutical researcher and coordinating clinical trials at the family hospital 3 days a week. Why do I tolerate such a life? Only one person on earth knows the real answer. The marble corridors of the house are perpetually hushed, their silence suffocating. That silence was abruptly broken by my sister Ashley's voice. "You're not actually planning to wear that to dinner, are you? At least put on your AES scarf." A dermatologist by profession and an Instagram influencer by passion, Ashley is undeniably my mother's favorite child. With 100,000 followers, she curates an immaculate public life. Snippets from patient consultations at St. Mary, Michelin-starred meals, yacht weekends. Naturally, I am never part of the frame. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll change into my usual uniform for serving." She nodded approvingly while adjusting the collar of her Chanel tweed jacket, already absorbed in composing her next post. My father, George Williams, serves as the hospital's director of strategic planning. He lives largely in deference to my mother, immersed in hobbies like golf and collecting luxury cars. His prized S-Class Mercedes lineup fills our garage, but his influence within the family is non-existent. He neither speaks up about my situation nor interferes. Each Sunday, dinner unfolds beneath the gleam of crystal chandeliers and around an opulent dining table. Mother routinely praises Ashley's growing online following, her voice filled with pride. In those moments, it's as though I do not exist. The silver cutlery on the white tablecloth gleams with cold indifference. Once I've completed my serving duties, I retreat to the kitchen and steal a glance out the window. The Charles River continues its steady course, unchanged by the turmoil inside these walls. Colleagues often ask me, "Why don't you move out?" Despite professional respect and recognition, why do I remain here, subject to this treatment? I never respond aloud. Instead, I whisper to myself, "One day, everything will change. Until then, I will endure." Because that was our promise. In the private room of the plaza, the chandelier lights shimmered gently. Crystalline reflections danced softly across the deep red carpet. Beyond the window, the sun dipped slowly behind the Charles River, casting its farewell glow over the city. The last light of the evening sun shimmered in delicate ripples across the Charles River, catching the water's surface like scattered gold. Inside the dining room, the rich aromas of white truffle risotto, poached Maine lobster, and grilled American prime beef filled the heavy, perfumed air. Mother glanced briefly at the sommelier's wine list before closing it with finality. "Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1986, she declared. I offered a silent nod and turned to supervise the decanting. Ashley, seated comfortably across the table, remained absorbed in her smartphone. I completed pouring the wine and stepped back into the shadows. A moment later, she retrieved her latest iPad, its rose gold edge glinting beneath the table lamp as she drew it from her Birkin bag. Her smug satisfaction was unmistakable. A Cartier bracelet, last birthday's gift from Mother, glistened on her wrist as she tapped the screen. "Look at these. Photos from our family cruise." Images began appearing, The newest Royal Caribbean vessel, the family posing on the upper deck, a candlelit dinner at sea, lazy afternoons beside a private pool. Flawless moments, curated and framed. Mother, her hand resting on her pearl necklace, viewed the images with quiet admiration. Father gave an occasional nod, adjusting the collar of his Brooks Brothers suit with idle precision. 2 unforgettable weeks in the Caribbean, Ashley continued. The captain's dinner was spectacular. Mom, your gown was stunning. Mother acknowledged the compliment with a graceful tilt of her wine glass. Her Chanel tweed suit glistened beneath the chandelier's light, elegant and unyielding. Father, ever the silent companion, continued to cut his steak. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Then, without thinking, the words slipped from me. What trip? The temperature in the room dropped. Cutlery paused midair. The soft clink of a knife against porcelain echoed far too loudly. Ashley slowly lowered her iPad, her expression curling into a smile, one of practiced cruelty. With perfect poise, she adjusted her jacket's collar and turned her eyes toward me. Well, she said, her voice syrupy and sharp, you're not part of the family, are you? You're the housekeeper. Mother and father laughed quietly, refined, restrained, but the sound lingered, strange and hollow in the hush of the luxury restaurant. Champagne and crystal flutes fizzed gently, the moat and Chandon bubbles rising like a mockery of celebration. From nearby tables, curious glances flickered toward us. Even the bartender's ice clink seemed unnaturally crisp. I realized I was gripping the edge of the tablecloth, expensive, hand-stitched linen, tight enough for my knuckles to pale. Oh, that's right, Ashley continued, glancing at her livestream screen, where the floating hearts kept multiplying. When Mom introduced us to the captain, she said she had 2 daughters. She tilted her head with exaggerated innocence. Oops, guess she wasn't counting you. Now, Ashley, Mother murmured, with the air of someone lightly correcting a witty child. There was no disapproval in her tone, only veiled amusement, perhaps even pride. Her diamond earrings sparkled as she shifted her head. I felt my hands begin to tremble. To steady myself, I clasped my uniform skirt, pressing the fabric tightly between my fingers. My vision blurred slightly. The chandelier above fractured into multiple rings, swaying gently like halos slipping from grace. Then Ashley looked up again, already moving on. I'm thinking of going to the Maldives next. Next, Ashley continued, her tone sugar-laced with cruelty. I'm planning it as a staff retreat for the hospital team. Naturally, the help isn't invited. In that instant, I rose from my seat in silence and reached for my smartphone. The room stilled. Eyes turned toward me, not in curiosity but in disbelief. The obedient housekeeper had stood up. It was as if I had shattered an unspoken law. The damask curtains trembled slightly, though the air remained still. Then I suppose I'll call my family, I said calmly, my voice measured. As I unlocked the screen, I angled it discreetly to shield the background image from view, especially from Mother. Ashley scoffed, her voice raised slightly. What are you talking about? You don't have a family, remember? Her perfectly applied lipstick had begun to smudge. Mother stared at me, expressionless, as if scrutinizing a sudden crack in fine porcelain. Father, clearly unsettled, brought his wine glass hastily to his lips. Another one of your fantasies, Mother murmured. You've always been such a difficult child. Ashley began to relax, reassured by the sound of Mother's disapproval. But just as her smug expression began to return, the restaurant door creaked open. The thick wooden door yielded slowly, casting a long shadow into the dining room. Ashley's phone, still broadcasting her live stream, wobbled precariously in her hand. A measured rhythm echoed across the marble floor, heels clicking, poised and assertive. And then she entered, Elizabeth Montgomery. With her arrival, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Clad in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford navy pantsuit, she moved with quiet authority. The Van Cleef and Arpels necklace resting at her collar glinted subtly, exuding elegance without ostentation. Apologies for the delay, Catherine, she said, her voice soft yet firm, like velvet wrapped around steel. Ashley's face went pale. Mother's fingers clenched around her wine glass. Father dropped his napkin as he scrambled to rise, failing to hide his astonishment. Elizabeth offered a graceful smile that saw through every performance in the room. "Elizabeth, why are you here?" Mother asked, her voice tight with uncharacteristic unease. "I came because I have something important to share," Elizabeth replied. She stepped beside me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. That simple, steady touch seemed to release something long buried inside me, something that had endured in silence. "Chairperson Margaret," Elizabeth began, her voice unshaken, "are you aware of the outcome of the recent board meeting?" Mother narrowed her eyes. "What are you referring to?" Ashley opened her mouth to intervene, but fell silent the moment Elizabeth turned her gaze toward her. "I've been nominated as the next chairperson of St. Mary Memorial Hospital." The chandelier's crystalline light cast a soft halo over her face, lending her announcement an almost regal gravity. "You must be joking," Mother scoffed. "You're still." "My surgical success rate is 98%, Elizabeth interrupted smoothly. "I perform over 400 operations each year, generating more than $10 million in annual revenue for this institution." Each word was delivered with the quiet force of indisputable truth. "But why now? Why say this here?" Mother's voice trembled. Elizabeth turned to me. Taking my hand in hers, she looked not at Mother, but directly into my eyes. "Because," she said, "Catherine is my partner." Time stopped. The air went still. Ashley's live stream abruptly cut to black. Connection error blinked across the phone screen like a final curtain. "We met 2 years ago at a medical conference," Elizabeth continued. "I was captivated by her research on clinical trials and by the brilliance and integrity behind it." Elizabeth's voice, steady and low, continued to fill the private room. "Catherine's research has the potential to transform cardiac surgery outcomes across the country. But more than that, it was her compassion and resilience that captured my heart." I gently tightened my grip on her hand, and she met my gaze with quiet warmth. "You too? You mean?" My father's voice emerged, hoarse and uncertain, as if part of him already knew. "I was raised in a devout Christian household," Elizabeth said, her gaze calm but resolute. "It took me years to come to terms with who I really am." She turned to me, and in that moment, the look in her eyes, full of understanding and love, seemed to heal something long buried inside me. But when I met Catherine, I finally stopped running. For the first time, I accepted myself, and from that day on, I began building the strength I would need to protect her. "Wait, this!" Mother attempted to rise from her seat, her voice catching. But Elizabeth's next words sliced through the tension like a scalpel. "Chairperson Margaret," she said, her tone sharpening, "I am fully aware of everything Catherine has suffered in this household." Her voice, though not raised, carried the force of justice long withheld. "Treating your own daughter like a domestic servant, leaving her behind on family vacations, erasing her existence from public view, from every photograph, every post." Ashley's hands trembled around her phone. The carefully crafted world of likes, filters, and admiration teetered at the edge of collapse. Mother opened her mouth to interject, but Elizabeth simply raised her hand, calmly, commandingly. "I would stake the chairpersonship of St. Mary Memorial itself on this truth. What I wish to protect is Catherine." Mother's face twisted momentarily, then smoothed into a rehearsed smile. She lowered her voice, lacing it with artificial warmth. "Oh, come now. We're still family. I'm sure if we sit down and talk." But Elizabeth didn't flinch. She became a live-in worker in this household 3 years ago. Not because she lacked options, but because you wanted to use her to get close to me. Elizabeth stepped closer and drew me in gently, protectively. "Your plan had an unexpected result." She paused, then continued, her voice softening with memory. "I still remember the Boston church where I grew up. Every Sunday, my father would read the same passage from the pulpit. The room stilled as her voice echoed gently under the chandelier's light. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast." 1 Corinthians, chapter 13. At the words, Father inhaled audibly, as if pulled back to a long-forgotten truth. "As both a Christian and a surgeon, I've tried to walk the righteous path," Elizabeth said. "But I was still hiding from myself, until I met Catherine." She looked at me again, her fingers enclosing mine with steady warmth. I met her exactly 2 years ago at a medical conference. Her presentation on clinical trial ethics moved me, not just as a professional, but as a person. Mother tried once more to interject, but Elizabeth pressed on, her voice like tempered steel. Yes, Chairperson Margaret wanted me as her successor. And yes, she used Catherine, placed her in this house to engineer proximity, to manipulate a connection. Ashley clutched her wine glass with both hands now. The cracks in her composure were visible, spreading. But your calculations failed. Elizabeth's tone now rang with rising power. I was drawn to Catherine not because of some boardroom strategy or data metrics, but because of who she is. Watching how she was treated in this family, silenced, diminished, invisible, I made a vow. She looked toward Mother once more. I would rise. I would gain power. And I would use it to protect the woman I love. Wait, Margaret began, her voice unsteady, cracking with forced diplomacy. We never really. But Elizabeth silenced her with a look, one that brooked no denial. Treating Catherine as a servant, excluding her from your celebrations, wiping her existence clean from social media. Is that how you define love? Silence blanketed the room, thick and undeniable. Outside, the Charles River shimmered in the night, its surface catching the moonlight like quiet witness. Then, Elizabeth turned toward Mother one final time. Her voice deepened, solemn, unwavering. Chairperson Margaret, my surgery success rate stands at 98%. I perform more than 400 operations annually, generating over $10 million in revenue for St. Mary Memorial. The board's decision to nominate me as the next chairperson is based solely on merit, Elizabeth stated, her voice crisp with conviction. At that, Mother's expression shifted instantly. The edges of her mouth curved into a rehearsed smile, her tone softening with artificial warmth. Well, Elizabeth, we're family after all. Surely this is just a small misunderstanding. For the first time, I spoke, not in a whisper, but aloud. My voice trembled slightly, but it carried strength. No, Mom. I remember everything. Every moment of these past 3 years. Ashley's cruelty. Dad's silence. And your gaze so cold, it could silence a room. Ashley fumbled with her phone, desperate to reclaim control, but her hands were shaking too violently to unlock the screen. I inhaled slowly. I'm proud of my work as a researcher and a clinical trial coordinator. And together, Elizabeth and I have achieved remarkable results. I rose to my feet. Elizabeth placed her hand gently at the small of my back, grounding me. But what I found was even more valuable than data or prestige. I found love, real, enduring love. Mother leaned forward, her voice now threaded with panic. Catherine, please, think about your standing at the hospital. Your future. That, Elizabeth said, her voice calm yet commanding, is precisely the problem. She turned toward the table, her chin lifted, her tone unwavering. I choose Catherine over the chairpersonship of St. Mary Memorial. Mother rose sharply from her seat, her voice no longer composed. Elizabeth, your career, your reputation. I built my career on skill and integrity, Elizabeth said evenly. And I've received an offer from Brigham and Women's. The room fell into stunned silence. The name of Boston's most revered hospital echoed like a final verdict. The color drained from Mother's face. Ashley looked stricken, her phone still frozen on the table, flashing connection error in quiet mockery. I gripped Elizabeth's hand tighter and took a breath I had waited 3 years to release. We no longer need to hide, I said, softly but clearly. Then came an unexpected voice, low, worn, and quiet. Go! Everyone turned. It was my father. That's enough, he said. He closed his eyes, and the fatigue in his face seemed to reflect years of unspoken regret. We lost sight of what mattered. With those words, Mother collapsed into her chair, the strength leaving her posture. Ashley sat frozen, staring blankly out the window at the Charles River's gleaming night view. Elizabeth turned toward me, and we walked hand in hand toward the door. Her presence beside me felt like a shield forged from every wound we had survived. At the threshold, I paused and glanced back one final time. The glittering chandelier, once so oppressive, now merely swayed above a table of broken illusions. And then, together, we stepped into the night. into freedom, into truth, into the life we chose for ourselves. Elizabeth turned back one last time. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. The final verse from 1 Corinthians lingered in the air like a quiet benediction. And love never fails. We left the private dining room hand in hand. Outside, the Charles River glittered under the night sky, as if offering its silent blessing on the beginning of our new life. 1 year later, morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of our shared office on the top floor of Brigham and Women's Hospital. "Catherine," Elizabeth said, glancing up from her computer, "there's a reply from the New England Journal of Medicine." I turned sharply, breath catching. "Was it accepted?" She smiled, her eyes luminous. "Yes, they're publishing our findings." I rushed to her side and took her hand, joy welling in my chest. Our 2 years of painstaking work, an innovative cardiac surgery technique, and the novel medication protocol that supported it, would finally reach the global medical community. "Congratulations, Dr. Montgomery," came a cheerful voice. Jane, our secretary and a former nurse from St. Mary, entered carrying coffee. She, like many others, had followed Elizabeth when she left the old hospital. "Thank you," Elizabeth replied, eyes warm. Then she touched the engagement ring on my hand. "Though soon, that name will change, too." Next month, in a quiet Provincetown church by the sea, we would vow to share our lives forever. Outside the window, spring sunlight shimmered on the Charles River surface. Across the water, the once imposing silhouette of St. Mary Memorial Hospital looked smaller somehow, less sure of itself. Since Mother's leadership was called into question, the institution had suffered. Her rigid control had driven away respected physicians. Ashley's social media scandal had eroded public trust even further. Her once flourishing following had dwindled. Her recent posts, tagged with #lonely and #familybonds, spoke volumes. From what I heard, she was still struggling to secure a permanent role, but perhaps she was beginning to understand something deeper. "Catherine, look!" Elizabeth pointed to my phone. A new email notification had appeared. The sender made me pause. "Father, dear Sine, today is your birthday. This past year, I've done a great deal of thinking. I've come to realize that somewhere along the way, we lost sight of what truly matters. I recently spoke with our pastor. He said, 'Love has no form, but it is always present.' For too long, I was trapped by appearances and tradition. I never stopped to consider your happiness as it truly is. Would you allow me to attend your wedding ceremony next month? Only if you and Elizabeth would welcome me. With love, Father." Tears blurred my vision. They rolled down my cheeks, warm and unrestrained. "Catherine," Elizabeth whispered. She rose and gently pulled me into her arms. Just then, another message arrived. "P.S. Your mother, she's changing. Little by little. The other day I heard her say, 'What were we trying to protect?' It may take time, but I believe we will find our way back." Elizabeth looked at me with soft determination. "Let's write him back," she said. "Let's build a new kind of family together." I nodded and turned toward the screen. Outside, the Charles River shimmered brighter than before, as if the world itself had exhaled. At that same hour, Chairperson's office, St. Mary Memorial Hospital. Margaret Williams sat alone, staring at the envelope on her desk. Thick white cardstock, gold embossed letters. "With sincere joy, we invite you to celebrate the beginning of our new life. Catherine Williams and Elizabeth Montgomery." She traced the letters with her finger. A tear slipped silently down her cheek. Then, slowly, she rose and walked to the window. Across the river, Brigham and Women's gleamed in the morning sun, proud, alive, forward-looking. "I'll go," she said softly. The words weren't addressed to anyone, but something had shifted in her voice, a quiet recognition. A beginning. Elsewhere, Ashley's phone buzzed on the marble counter. A message from Catherine lit up the screen. "Dear Ashley, I saw your latest post. Would you like to have tea sometime at my new lab? I'd really like to see you. Kath." Ashley stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, slowly, she began to type. "Can I come? Actually, there's something I've wanted to say for a long time. I'm sorry, and thank you." She hit send. Outside, the Charles River sparkled in the sunlight. A gentle breeze drifted in through the window, soft, cool, and full of promise. The spring wind had begun to weave a new story. A story of healing. A story of love